The manhwa opens with an aura of suspense as the Grand Duke finds himself seated before the imposing assembly of priests. His voice, though cold, carries an edge of urgency as he demands the return of Saintess Dinah. The priest's response is a calculated play of smirks and reminders, a silent acknowledgement of his initial act of taking the Saintess from the temple's embrace. Amidst this verbal duel, the head priest leans forward, his eyes locking onto the Grand Duke's with a hint of mischief. His words, measured and deliberate, weave an intricate tapestry of intrigue. You remember, of course, that she once stood as a mere mortal in your eyes, her saintly potential concealed beneath humble flesh. The words linger, pregnant with unspoken implications, drawing both parties deeper into the enigma at hand. The Grand Duke's mask of composure wavers, a subtle reflection of the intricate power play unraveling before him. The air grows electric with the unspoken tension coiling as both sides navigate a delicate dance of dominance. The head father's voice drops, a conspiratorial tone underscoring his next words. Consider, if you will, another option. A mere million Aaron could secure for you a fully awakened saintess. Unbothered by their offers, the Grand Duke smashes the head priest's rose back, leaving him entirely baffled by this sudden attack. The Duke unsheathes his sword and affirms that he is doing this all for the sake of his daughter. Fuming in rage for his insolent behavior, the head priest goes on to warn him that the Grand Duke will not be spared for this act of insult against him. The act is equally surprising for his men, who even try to remind Grand Duke about the temple's status. Unfazed by their repetitive assertions, the Grand Duke advances purposefully, his steps unwavering, and with a single decisive strike, severs his arm. In a resolute tone, he elucidates that the young woman isn't Dinah. She is, in fact, his daughter, Eshtar. He emphasizes her role as his kin over her designation as his saintess. The Grand Duke's words serve as both revelation and caution, resonating in the charged atmosphere. He delineates a clear boundary, issuing a stern warning to the temple against any future mentions of his daughter. The message is unmistakable. He won't hesitate to instigate a conflict if the temple trespasses the sanctity of his familial bonds. Inside the mansion, one of the maids asks Eshtar, a beautiful blonde-haired girl, to come inside as it's getting colder for her to play. Eshtar, a well-mannered kid, follows the instruction and heads inside. Inside the prison, Saint Ravian is welcomed by the staff, wondering if she came inside. The saintess iterates that she can't give up pregnancy just because she became the saintess, and besides that, her baby is more of a dearest friend to her. To the lady in command, Mrs. Rafian is pretty kind even for a monstrous person incarcerated in front of them. Stepping inside the prison, Mrs. Rafian strides closer to poor Dinah and inquires about her well-being. Mrs. Rafian goes on to elaborate that the weight of an immense workload burdens her in recent days, her voice faltering due to the strain of her demanding routine. She reveals that her purpose in coming here was to revitalize herself with Dinah's life force. However, her expectations are dashed as she's disappointed by the meager amount of magical essence yielded by Dinah's blood. Frustrated, she demands a deeper incision, aiming to draw more of Dinah's power. Yet, in a surprising turn, Khaled steps forward, offering his assistance instead. Overwhelmed by his unexpected intervention, Ms. Rafian concedes, allowing him to perform the extraction. As Khaled strides ahead, he unsheaths his holy sword, brimming with divine blessings. Unfortunately, Dinah is rendered powerless, unable to do more than voice her objections to this painful process. Regrettably, her words hold no sway over the cold-hearted Khaled. Even though she's exploiting the captive Dinah for her gain, Ms. Rafian audaciously perceives herself as wrong in this scenario. With a chilling warning, she informs Dinah that she could return to this cell every day, drinking her blood if fairness seems absent. Ms. Rafian reiterates that Dinah has the option to appeal to the goddess, implying that repentance could lead to absolution of her transgressions. Smirking at her miseries, Rafian lets Dinah rot inside the cell and heads out. Austin Empire is the country where a saint and an emperor have been bestowed equal powers, and before the blessing of light, the empire was walking in an era of destruction. There was the time when epidemics were rampant and the monsters used to rush over the human settlements. With bodies lined on the streets, human civilization was left hopeless, till one day when the door to the era of light was opened 100 years back. The empire went on to enter the Golden Age, a consequence of the salvation of its ruler. Shikan built a temple in honor of a saint who appeared at the invitation. Ever since the occurrence, human civilization is now living under the influence of endless peace and prosperity. Except for the one person who has been incarcerated in the prison, the servants bring her food, and the new maid Annie wonders why this poor girl is tied up. The older maids clarify that the innocent-looking girl behind the bar is nothing short of a monster in herself. Her tongue has been squeezed to prevent her from hurting herself. Their eyes collide, and Dinah can now communicate with Annie. Dinah controls her with her powers and uses Annie to free herself from the shackles. The maids panic at the sight and call for the priest or saint nearby, but it appears that they have been late to react. Dinah has bit her tongue and killed herself. Dinah stirs, Raphael's voice reaching her with a blend of concern and curiosity. Lost in thoughts of reincarnation, Dinah discovers herself in the temple's training chamber, Raphael present. Struck by Dinah's disheveled appearance, Raphael edges closer, her worry evident. However, Dinah's sudden panic propels her to retreat despite their profound childhood connection. In earlier days, their companionship was unbreakable. Raphael's apprehension for Dinah's welfare is founded, leading her to recommend a break, underscoring her genuine care. Meanwhile, murmurs ripple among fellow students in the hall, questioning why esteemed Ms. Raphael is investing attention in the unremarkable Dinah. Clear distinctions mark the students. On Dinah's journey back, a nun apprehends her for slipping out of class. The nun takes the moment to remind Dinah of her lagging progress and the absence of standout talents. This serves as a stark reminder of the urgency for Dinah to exert unwavering effort to maintain her standing within the temple's ranks. However, the death does not end her chapter but rather brings her back to life, wondering why can't she die even if she desires to. Though she soon realizes that this is not the right to ponder such wandering thoughts and hurries on to check the time and date of her reincarnation. It's August 4 of the year 381. In her earlier 12th and 13th reincarnation, she opened her eyes in April 382, almost a year from now. She wonders if this is the last time she is regressing in time. However, she sheds her thoughts thinking that there is not much hope for her. No matter how many times she regresses in time, the orphan candidate will be king of temples, leaving her no place to save herself. Dinah is already heart-wrenched. Despite her regressions, she has made numerous attempts to flee from her miserable fate, but has followed her in every regression. With tears plundering her eyes, Dinah cuts down her veins to end her life, but the divine powers come to her rescue again in her wounds on her own. There are only ways for her to end her life, either be tied up with the sacred magic tool or get killed by someone from outside the temple. There was a time when she used to love this place. One day, while she was begging for food, she came across this priest who identified the holy powers residing inside her and took her to his place. Despite her several reincarnations, the place she opens her eyes stays the very same. With her diary placed on the nearby shelf, she finds herself standing before the priest, whom she met by chance. Although she lacks cherished memories involving him, his simple acts of kindness have been enough to stave off hunger and desperation, preserving her fragile existence. The nun's compassionate guidance leads Dinah to her chamber, a haven that has felt like her own sanctuary since her arrival. Confronting the imposing statue, Dinah's contemplation deepens. Why would the divine bestow her with potent, sacred powers only to thrust her onto Earth, a realm where the potential for misuse looms large? A profound sense of melancholy washes over her as she kneels in devout supplication, beseeching the statue for liberation from the ceaseless hardships that beset her. Amid her internal tumult, fragments of memory resurface. There was a time a festival marked this season at the temple. A glint of possibility emerges in Dinah's thoughts, offering a potential route to end her suffering and attain solace. Inside the temple, the students are running all over the place in the preparations for the forthcoming festival. It's celebrated every year. The heads of 4 pivotal families attend the festival, and out of them, one is Archduke Geheim the Regia, the man who never lost a war. He is an assassin who is crazy for war and slaughters and knows to never leave a piece of grass in the war. Even her thoughts send chills down her spine. Dinah trembles and the apples fall off her hands. The nun scolds her for not being attentive as Dinah collects the apples from the floor. With the divine powers bestowed upon her, it is evident that Dinah cannot die alone. She decides to concord a plan and somehow fall prey at the hands of the monster Duke. On her way into the gallery, Khaled calls her name. Khaled is the son of a famous aristocrat and one of the famous apprentices in the temples as well. She was also amongst those who like her because Khaled always showed great consideration for her. However, this was merely a display in his childhood, as he grew up to become a knight of Raphael. Khaled never tried to save her once from the pain and sufferings. Therefore, Dinah now despises him as a mere hypocrite. Khaled anxiously inquires about her health because she surely does not look fine. However, Dinah avoids him and leaves in sight, maintaining that she has a lot to do for the preparation, and Khaled can only see her leaving him so abruptly. Inside the temple, the students are mesmerized by the astonishing personality of Mr. Ben, who goes by greeting the girls Camilla and Ellie. Wondering how one can be so perfect like Mr. Ben, they affirm that his perfectionism has kept Mr. Ben beside the monstrous Duke. When it comes to his master, the Archduke, Mr. Ben is always aware of the smallest developments around him, even the birds buzzing outside Duke's room. He goes by the reputation that Mr. Ben knows everything. Inside the mansion, Ben inquires the Archduke about his preferences to wear on the event. The Archduke has chosen the black dress to wear on the event, where people normally wear the white dress, to express his diluted terms with the church. Mr. Ben assures to take care of his clothing while the Duke prepares himself for the celebrations. In the lounge behind, Theresia comes across his child Judy and questions if he got into a brawl again and got himself injured. Judy attempts to clarify that he sustained the bruises in the race, and his other child, Dennis Theresia, also sides with her brother. Before leaving the mansion, the Duke asks about the things they need, since he will be bringing a bunch of them on his return. Dennis maintains that father must bring him the infamous book Voice of the Rules, which is considered a limited edition publishing in the temple. On his turn, Judy goes on to shock everyone when he demands a younger sister. By clarifying his demand, Judy reiterates that father must bring him a sister from the temple, since both Hans and Sebastian have younger sisters, but he does not have one. Duke considers this demand as a part of his pranks, but Judy's reaction shows otherwise. He acts heart-wrenched that his father only loves Dennis, which is why his demand is not being considered. Tired by the argument, the Archduke calls for Dennis to help his brother understand that he can bring him a maid of his own, but finding a sister is not a possibility knowing that they don't have a mother. Dennis brings a solution to the problem to make both his brother and father agree on a mutual consensus. Dennis proposes that their father should give a consideration to adopting a child. As the carriage sets off for the temple, Mr. Ben takes a moment to reassure Duke, emphasizing that there's no need for him to be overly concerned about the audacious demands put forth by Judy. He reminds Duke that Judy's penchant for seeking outlandish things is a recurrent pattern, and as history has shown, these whims tend to dissipate over time. Just as before, Mr. Ben predicts that Duke will manage to navigate through these demands successfully. However, an intriguing shift occurs. Duke's contemplative expression reveals that his child's latest wish has sparked a new level of consideration. Duke admits that he initially brushed it off as a playful request, but Judy's unwavering determination and perseverance have prompted him to view it with a fresh perspective. He acknowledges that this matter deserves more thought and that he intends to give it the serious consideration it warrants. Ever since the unfortunate passing of their mother, Duke has been determined to ensure his children lack for nothing. His approach has been to indulge their every desire, hoping to fill the void left by their mother's absence. Paradoxically, this strategy has inadvertently led to a new dilemma. His children have grown weary of the excess materialism he's inundated them with. The constant stream of possessions and indulgence has given rise to a sense of discontent among them, leaving Duke to grapple with the unforeseen consequences of his efforts to provide solace. Getting more material products like toys does not give them affection like a sister might. They have grown up in an environment deprived of affection, and bringing a good child can be beneficial in teaching the boys what real bonds mean. Though adoption is not an easier decision to make, Duke is confident in his intuition that he has never been mistaken. The notion of adopting a child fills him with anticipation, igniting a desire to provide love and care to a young soul. On the day of the grand celebrations, the priest ascends the stage to deliver his speech. Amidst the reverent chatter, behind Theresia exudes an air of indifference, seemingly unperturbed by the words being spoken. Seated amongst the rows of students, Dinah's aspirations seem to be unraveling right before her eyes. The task of getting closer to the Duke appears far more formidable than she had initially envisioned. Beyond the complexities of carrying out any form of assassination, she's even struggling to find a means to engage in conversation with him. Her musings are abruptly interrupted when two girls approach her with instructions to fetch chairs from the warehouse. With clenched fists, Dinah reflects on how her past self would have likely complied without a second thought. However, this time around, she shocks her fellow students by vocally opposing their orders. An atmosphere of tension permeates the scene as Dinah's defiance clashes with their expectations. Fueled by frustration over her altered behavior, one student vents her anger at Dinah. In a heated exchange, the student vehemently asserts the social divide between them, emphasizing that Dinah, as a poor orphan, can never aspire to attain the same status as a noble. Unbothered by their blabberings, Dinah's entire focus is on the chair, which is left empty, implying that the Archduke has left the ceremony. Her gaze calms all over the place and eventually finds him leaving the temple with his aides. She attempts to reach him out, but the girls standing next to her pull her back from the arm. Suddenly, a nun shows up and inquires about the fuss. The girls accuse Dinah of getting up in the middle of speech and falsely assert that they are barely asking her to take her chair. When the nun inquires about the purpose, Dinah responds that she was up to bring chairs from the warehouse. Deep down, she is taken worry that she won't be able to cling to the Duke if she goes onto this pace. She rushes outside to find the Duke and eventually catches him outside the temple. She stimulates all her courage and resolute not to let go of the opportunity. Summoning her courage, Dinah strides forward with determination. She approaches the Duke and respectfully requests a few moments of his time for a private conversation. The Duke, taking note of her attire that seems to indicate a saintly candidate, obliges her request. He instructs the guards to make way for her, granting her access to him. As she gets closer, her heart races, aware of the danger and the potential consequences of her actions. As they say, fate is eternal. Once in fate, the miseries of life are bound to repeat. Unfortunately, Dinah is experiencing this harsh reality of life. She finds herself standing in front of the Duke, who coldly repeats that Dinah must disclose who sent her to assassinate him, else she will be dying in his hands. Little does he know that his warning brings a glimmer of hope for Dinah, who is impatient to get rid of this life. She clings onto the king, hoping that he will eventually kill her. Her actions shock the Duke, impelling him to wonder what weird child he has come across. The Duke rebukes the silly child for thinking that she can actually kill him and rather asserts that her death has dragged her to him. Duke repeats his question, inquires if the temple has sent her, and probes what promises convinced her to pull off this risky task. However, despite his continuous menacing assertions, Dinah is unfazed. She does not respond to any of his accusations. Finally, when the Duke orders to hand her to the temple, Dinah bursts out, begging that she does not want to go back to the temple. She needs his help to kill her instead. With tears plundering her eyes, Dinah begs not to even depict the slightest of resistance if he kills her. Duke commands the guards to release Dinah from their grasp. His gaze is unwavering as he studies her. Curious about her age, he inquires, and to his surprise, it's revealed that Dinah is merely a 12-year-old girl. His expression softens as he places a gentle hand on her head, his voice taking on a more compassionate tone. He questions her once more, wondering if she truly wishes to avoid returning to the temple, and then astounds her with a proposition that leaves her bewildered. In an unexpected twist, the Duke suggests that Dinah could become his daughter instead. The revelation leaves her utterly shocked, her mind reeling to process this unimaginable turn of events. Stunned, she stammers, asking him to repeat himself to ensure she hasn't misheard. With a reassuring nod, the Duke confirms his offer, his eyes kind yet determined. Overwhelmed by this unexpected proposal, Dinah's thoughts race. She expresses her reservations, her status as an orphan making her doubt the possibility of being adopted by someone as prestigious as the Duke. The Duke's response, however, is resolute. It matters not to him. In his eyes, her background doesn't define her worthiness of being part of his family, and if she accepts his offer, she will be among the noblest children of the empire. Without a second thought, Dinah accepts his offer. She will be getting rid of the temple too. It's a beneficial situation for her either way. Looking at Dinah, the Duke ponders what took this maid kid to take such a step. She even begged for her death, and her expressions were entirely genuine, with any amalgamation of any underlying motive. When the Duke inquires about her name, it's the first time someone has shown such interest in her name. Dinah hesitantly introduces herself to the Duke. Wearing a gentle smile, the Duke informs Dinah to wait for a moment. He reveals that he'll be dispatching someone to initiate the formal adoption process and guide her to his residence as his newfound daughter. Expressing his apologies for startling her earlier, he acknowledges that his joyful expression might have been disconcerting for a young child like her. Against his assertions, Dinah maintains that she found his looks quite affectionate. No one has ever looked to her with such consideration. Before the Duke departs, Dinah can't hold herself to question when will she really be leaving this place. The Duke responds that he will be striving to complete the adoption procedure at the earliest so Dinah can head home with him. Dinah is happy that in the coming 5 days of the procedure, she will be free from the temple and eventually she can die, getting rid of this regressing life. The man consults with Dehain, asking if he is interested in considering a candidate for the Saintess position, and Dehain affirms his interest. The man goes on to explain that their temple considers the candidate for the Saintess role a valuable asset. In principle, he's reluctant to offer anyone to Dehain unless it's a lower-ranking candidate. Dehain asserts his desire for Dinah as his candidate. However, when the man belittles Dinah for being an orphan from the slums, Dehain's fury emerges. He forcefully emphasizes his choice of Dinah as the candidate for the Saintess position and presents a donation check of 1 million errands to assert his stance. After presenting the check, Dehain and Ben depart, and meanwhile, the man along with his accomplice engages in a discussion about their intention to keep the check for themselves instead of using it as a donation. Meanwhile, Dinah's wound is healed and she contemplates the possibility of venturing outside. Her unique power previously prevented her from leaving the temple, making her departure unexpectedly simple. Yet her excitement wanes as she considers the potential challenges ahead. She acknowledges the presence of the Grand Duke's twin sons and her own doubts about being accepted. Dinah's perception of nobility is tainted by prejudice, disdain, and oppression. She believes her orphan status will likely result in dehumanizing treatment, prompting her to question if she'll be treated as anything more than an outcast. Despite her difficult circumstances, Dinah contemplates ending her life when the right moment arrives. Until then, she braces herself to endure the challenges ahead. As Dinah is being led by a nun to meet the Grand Duke, the nun instructs her to follow whatever the Grand Duke says. In response to Dinah's inquiry, the Saintess mentions that if Dehain were to abandon her, she would be left to fend for herself. Hearing this from the Saintess is heartbreaking, given Dinah's previous attachment to the temple. On her way, Dinah encounters Ravian, and soon Ravian halts and inquires Dinah about her destination. The Saintess explains that starting from that day, Dinah will be going to Duke Tertia's residence. The sudden news startles Ravian, prompting her to seek permission from the Saintess to bid farewell to Dinah due to their close friendship. Subsequently, Ravian escorts Dinah outside the temple and questions the authenticity of her journey to the Grand Duke's house. Ravian's tone and expressions reveal a hint of jealousy and surprise at the Tertia family's decision to adopt an orphan like Dinah, possessing the lowest level of divine power. Yet Ravian swiftly realizes the inappropriateness of her reaction and apologizes to Dinah, attributing her fierce words to the sorrow of seeing Dinah leave. Despite her anger, Dinah listens to Ravian's apology. Frustration boils within Dinah as she recognizes that even after the mistreatment she endured from Ravian, her supposed friend continues to feign friendship. The realization deepens her resentment toward Ravian's insincerity and manipulations. Despite her burning desire for revenge against Ravian, Dinah manages to quell her anger and instead conveys her genuine well wishes. She takes a deep breath, composing herself before speaking. With a smile that conceals her true feelings, Dinah expresses her hopes for Ravian's happiness and prosperity. In a voice that hides her true intentions, Dinah showers Ravian with words of praise, wishing her good health and a future filled with positive experiences. While she speaks these benevolent words, a darker narrative runs through Dinah's thoughts. In the depths of her mind, she secretly hopes for misfortune and turmoil to befall Ravian. A stark contrast to the seemingly kind wishes she's outwardly expressing. After Dinah finishes her well wishes, Ravian expresses gratitude and begins to depart. As Ravian leaves, she can't help but ponder the shift in Dinah's demeanor. Meanwhile, Dinah takes a moment to steady herself, finding reassurance in the knowledge that she will no longer have to cross paths with Ravian. This thought helps Dinah regain her composure and find some semblance of peace. Under the night sky, Dehain seeks out Irene and discovers her gazing at the stars. Engaging her in conversation, Irene asks if they might be expecting a baby soon. Meanwhile, the Saintess guides Dinah out of the temple. She gestures toward a forest path and informs Dinah that someone awaits her at its end. With these words, the Saintess leaves Dinah alone, shutting the temple door behind her. Dinah's past has been fraught with suffering, abandonment, and betrayal. However, as she stands there, she senses a difference this time. Despite the cycle of pain that has defined her life, Dinah's current situation feels distinct. Before Dinah stands Ben, who reveals that he has been waiting for her. Identifying himself as the Archduke's secretary, Ben conveys his position to Dinah. With humility, Dinah lowers her head and greets Ben, asking him to care for her. In response, Ben politely advises Dinah not to bow, explaining that she's now a member of the Theresia family. Ben elaborates that the Theresia family is the sole archduchy within the empire, and Dinah will hold a special position as the Archduke's only daughter. Her actions and behavior will reflect on the family's honor. Sensing Dinah's confusion, Ben reassures her that with time she will grow accustomed to her new life and responsibilities. For Dinah, the idea of being part of the Archduke's family feels almost unbelievable, a dramatic shift from her previous circumstances. Having boarded the wagon, Dinah expresses her gratitude to Dehain for keeping his promise. He affirms his commitment to fulfilling his word. Inwardly, Dinah begins to draw a comparison between her current situation and her past. She recalls Ravian's facade of friendship at the temple, contrasting it with Dehain's sincerity. Observing Esther positioned at a certain remove, Dehain's curiosity compels him to ask if she's at ease. His discerning gaze then shifts to her sparse possessions contained within a diminutive bag. The Archduke foresees a multitude of acquisitions that lie ahead, contrasting with Esther's humble outlook. She humbly states that she doesn't require many material possessions, considering her eventual plan to end her life. This contemplation prompts Dehain to reflect on the disparate approaches to communication exhibited by Esther and Judy. He muses about Judy's straightforwardness in expressing his desires compared to Dinah's reticence. Dehain finds himself uncertain about Dinah's preferences and wishes she could be more direct like Judy in communicating her needs. Choosing to create a fresh identity, Dehain resolves to rename Dinah. Recollecting a conversation with Irene where she expressed a desire to name their child after a radiant star, he decides on the name Esther. Sharing this decision with Dinah, he elaborates that Esther symbolizes a child who gleams like the stars. Upon hearing this, Dinah, now called Esther, responds with a hint of bitterness, stating that she has lived a life shrouded in darkness and doubts her ability to ever shine. In contrast, Dehain holds a more optimistic perspective. He counters her self-doubt, asserting his belief that she possesses the potential to illuminate the world. Embracing the moment, he joyfully welcomes Esther into the Theresia family with her new name. The name represents a newfound beginning, casting aside her past and embracing the chance to step out of the shadows and into a life of brightness. Additionally, Dehain extends the courtesy of choice to Dinah, allowing her to decide whether she's comfortable with her new name. After thoughtful consideration, Dinah embraces the opportunity to adopt her new identity. Even if it's just for a brief span, she's eager to claim this fresh start and agrees to the name Esther. Continuing their journey, Dehain observes the transformation within Esther. Now at ease, she sleeps soundly, unburdened by the worries that once plagued her. Dehain reflects on the depths of her previous struggles, contemplating the hardships she must have endured. In the ensuing moments, Dehain's perceptive eyes catch the sight of Esther's frayed attire. A train of thought leads into a revelation. The worn clothing once belonged to the temple's priests. With a swift and determined decision, he beckons Ben to redirect their path toward a clothing store. In an additional directive, he specifies their destination, Udar. The urgency in his words signals the importance of ensuring Esther's comfort and providing her with suitable attire. In a dream, Esther finds herself seated on a garden bench alongside a young boy. Their conversation begins with the boy inquiring about Esther's interactions with the Grand Duke. As their dialogue unfolds, the boy's focus shifts, and he expresses his concern for Esther's well-being. Just as the conversation takes a poignant turn, Esther's slumber is interrupted by a wakeful visit from the Grand Duke himself to Hein. He informs Esther of an upcoming important trip to Tertia territory's older little street, explaining that it is essential for her to have a broader selection of clothing for the future. Subsequently, Esther, accompanied by Dehain and his secretary, Ben, embarks on the journey to the clothing store. Upon their arrival, they are greeted with the utmost respect by Lady Christian, the proprietor of the establishment. Furthermore, Dehain takes the opportunity to convey to Lady Christian his intention to select clothing for the young girl, referring to Esther. Upon noticing Esther's disheveled appearance, Lady Christian exercises discretion, refraining from commenting on her condition so as not to upset her. Subtly, Lady Christian leans in and inquires to Esther about her name. However, before Esther can respond, Dehain intervenes, supplying her name as Esther. With a considerate gesture, Dehain turns to Esther, assuring her that he and Ben will remain present. He encourages Esther to take her time and explore the array of clothing options available, emphasizing her right to choose beautiful attire for herself. Christian guides Esther to a more secluded area within the store and kindly instructs her to wait. Offering a catalog, Christian encourages Esther to peruse the selection of dresses and make her choice. Esther, however, hesitates about sitting on an expensive chair. Seeking reassurance, she inquires if it's permissible. Christian warmly assures her that it's perfectly acceptable. This simple affirmation triggers a realization within Esther. She's no longer in the confines of the temple. The contrast becomes clear. Her actions would have been met with scolding in the temple, but now she can sit without fear of reprimand. Christian continues on her way, her curiosity piqued by the unusual sight of the Grand Duke accompanied by a young girl. Observing Esther, she notices the girl's unease in this unfamiliar situation. Esther clings to the catalog yet doesn't open it, a behavior that Christian briefly contemplates but dismisses, deciding not to dwell on it. Presenting the chosen clothes to Esther, Christian's face lights up at the girl's awestruck reaction to the beautiful garments. As they delve into various designs, Christian proudly showcases their store's special creations, earning Esther's delighted admiration. After considering her options, Esther makes her selections. Christian's experienced eye notices Esther's petite face, and she skillfully offers advice on which style would best suit her. Yet within herself, Esther contemplates the futility of acquiring such things since her departure is imminent. As she finally rejoins Dehain, she can't help but seek his opinion on her appearance, questioning if she looks strange. Dehain, upon seeing Esther, is immediately struck by her resemblance to Irene and envisions what their hypothetical daughter might resemble. He assures Esther that the dress suits her perfectly. The simple act of donning the dress fills Esther with a euphoric sensation, as if she's floating on air. Curious about the fit, Dehain queries Christian if the dress is the only suitable size. Christian responds that there are still more options to explore. Esther soon emerges in yet another dress, and her beauty shines even brighter than before. Amidst the unfolding scene, Dehain turns to his secretary, Ben, instructing him to acquire all the dresses that Esther has sampled during her fitting. In a gesture of finality, Dehain also commands Ben to discard Esther's previous attire, recognizing that she will no longer have any need for those worn-out garments. In stark contrast, Esther finds herself enveloped in a sensation akin to a dream. Soon after, Dehain escorts Esther to the grandeur of the Grand Duke Tertia's mansion, a place that will now become her permanent residence. Dehain proceeds to inform Esther that this magnificent mansion also serves as the dwelling for the Grand Duke's sons, adding another layer of significance to her new home. This revelation underscores the prestigious and exclusive nature of her new surroundings, highlighting the unique position she finds herself in. Esther and Dehain are warmly received by the mansion's staff, and Delbert approaches them to extend a gracious welcome to Dehain. Curious about the whereabouts of the twins, Dehain inquires to Delbert about their location, and Delbert informs him that they are upstairs. In the midst of this, Esther feels a mixture of confusion and nervousness, unprepared for the presence of so many people. As Delbert conveys Dehain's request for the twins to come downstairs, Judy and Dennis make their appearance, addressing Dehain as Dad. Judy notices Esther at Dehain's side and inquires Dehain about her identity, playfully referring to her as a brat. In the midst of this interaction, Esther and Dennis share a meaningful gaze. Prompted by Dehain, the twins descend to greet Esther, setting the stage for their initial encounter. Dehain proceeds to inform the twins that Esther is now their sister, a revelation that takes Judy by surprise, eliciting a more pronounced reaction from him. As this news settles in, Esther realizes that in the eyes of the twins, she's essentially an unfamiliar presence and she doesn't expect a warm reception. Nevertheless, Judy approaches Esther and casually questions if she's younger than him. Filled with curiosity, Judy turns to Dehain and asks him how he managed to acquire a sister so quickly. In response, Dennis playfully chides Judy, calling him an idiot, and clarifies that Esther has been adopted by their father, Dehain. Dehain reaffirms this, officially declaring Esther as their sister going forward. Judy inquires to Esther about her origins, prompting Esther to introduce herself before revealing that she hails from the temple. Judy, taken aback, questions whether Esther was plucked from the temple, but Dehain intercedes, cautioning Judy and threatening to involve a tutor if his behavior persists. Sensing the rebuke, Judy decides to depart, assuring Esther that they'll meet later. However, Dehain halts Judy and instructs him to accompany Esther around the mansion. Judy, seemingly reluctant, counters that he has plans with his friends. Searching for Dennis to delegate the task of giving Esther a tour, Judy discovers Dennis missing, leaving him no choice but to take on the role himself. Initially, Judy escorts Esther to the mansion's second floor, clarifying that this area is mostly utilized by their father, Dehain. He goes on to explain that guest rooms are situated on the third and fourth floors. Judy then points out that he and Dennis occupy a room on the fourth floor, allowing Esther to select a room on the third floor. Esther is awestruck by the sheer size of the mansion, while Judy begrudgingly fulfills his role as a guide, irritated by Dehain's decision. Intriguingly, Esther's appearance reminds Judy of his mother. Suddenly, Esther comes to a stop as a particular room captures her attention. Evidently intrigued by this room, Esther's interest piques Judy's curiosity. Judy reveals that he uses this room to sneak out of the mansion. Nevertheless, after a brief hesitation, he concedes, permitting Esther to choose that room on one condition. She must accompany him to meet Sebastian, his friend. Without much delay, Esther agrees to Judy's condition and assures him that she will indeed accompany him to meet Sebastian. As they continue their tour, Delbert appears and delivers the message that the Grand Duke wishes to meet with Esther. After some time, Esther finds herself seated at a table, where her attention is drawn to an abundance of cookies. Observing this, she deduces that Dehain has a fondness for desserts and treats. In the midst of these events, Dehain's mind briefly wanders, pondering if Esther might not have a preference for cookies. However, he promptly shifts his focus and presents Esther with her adoption documents. Esther takes her time reading through the documents before eventually putting her signature on them. With that, Dehain warmly congratulates Esther for formally becoming a member of the Tertia family. Yet Dehain observes a certain lack of animation in Esther's demeanor. Seeking to bring some comfort and perhaps a smile to her face, he takes a cookie and gently feeds it to her. Esther's response is immediate and genuine, as she finds the cookie incredibly delicious, allowing a momentary spark of joy to light up her expression. Furthermore, Dehain assures Esther that he is committed to bringing happiness into her life every day, pledging that she will never lack anything again. Soon, Delbert arrives to inform Dehain that Esther has fallen asleep. Taking this opportunity, Dehain summons a family meeting with the twins. Morning arrives and Esther awakens from a restful slumber, greeted by the gentle embrace of sunlight filtering through her curtains. Shortly thereafter, a maid named Dorothy enters Esther's room, offering a friendly inquiry about Esther's sleep. Esther responds with appreciation, acknowledging that she indeed slept well. With breakfast approaching, Dorothy suggests her assistance in getting ready. Esther graciously accepts the offer, thanking Dorothy for her kind gesture. Upon reaching the dining table, Esther notices the absence of tableware set specifically for her, which leaves her feeling a bit disheartened. Just then, Dennis approaches and warmly invites her to join them, assuring her that her place is being prepared and the missing tableware is not an oversight. Esther's spirits lift at his words. In the midst of this, it becomes apparent that Judy has overslept, a recurring pattern for him. As they settle at the table, Dennis engages Esther in conversation to confirm her name, and she responds with affirmation. Demonstrating his considerate nature, Dennis requests Delbert, the butler, to pour water for Esther. Dennis goes on to explain his own morning ritual of starting the day with a glass of water to promote good blood circulation. Encouraging Esther, he suggests the idea of establishing her own morning routine for a healthier start to the day. Simultaneously, Esther senses a certain distance from Dennis, recognizing that he doesn't seem particularly fond of her. His unexpected initiation of conversation catches her off guard as she hadn't anticipated him reaching out first. On the other hand, Dennis reflects on the previous night when Dehane had a heartfelt conversation with him and Judy. Dehane emphasized that Esther's origin didn't matter. What was important was that she was now their sister. He implored Dennis and Judy not to tease or mistreat Esther, singling out Judy, who often caused trouble. Dehane stressed the significance of protecting Esther and fostering a strong familial bond. He encouraged the twins to embrace Esther as part of their family and to establish harmonious relationships with her. As Dennis returns to the present moment, he contemplates Dehane's uncharacteristic concern for someone outside their family circle, leaving him puzzled by this unexpected display of care. A little later, Esther remarks about the water tasting delightful, expressing her appreciation for the clean water she didn't have access to in the temple. Dehane enters, greeting Dennis and Esther warmly. Esther addresses him as Lord, which slightly annoys Dehane. Despite this, he remains patient and refrains from showing his irritation. Esther is thrilled to be at the table with delicious food. However, Dennis notices her struggle with utensils. He takes the lead, teaching her how to use a fork and knife correctly. Esther quickly catches on, mastering the skill. This sight reassures Dehane that he doesn't need to be concerned about Dennis' behavior towards Esther. It's evident that Dennis is willing to help and support her. Subsequently, Dorothy relays to Esther that Judy had arranged a meeting at the Havel Garden before 2:30 p.m. Esther proposes that Dorothy convey to Judy to go ahead without her, expressing her intent to follow soon after. Intrigued by Esther's evident happiness, Dorothy raises the question of joining her, a proposition that Esther readily agrees to. After a brief interval, Esther reaches the expansive garden, where she is taken aback by its sheer magnitude. The immense scale of the garden leaves her surprised and awestruck. In the midst of this, Dorothy informs Esther that she has thoughtfully prepared a lunchbox for their outing. Settling down on a bench, the two companions decide to wait for Judy's arrival. Esther's excitement is palpable as she eagerly anticipates Judy's appearance. She fervently hopes for Judy's swift arrival, her anticipation filling the moments. However, despite her hopeful expectations, time passes and there is still no sign of Judy. The sense of waiting and wondering hangs in the air as Esther's enthusiasm meets the quiet reality of the unfolding scene. Meanwhile, Dorothy contemplates whether she should suggest that Esther return, considering Judy's apparent delay. However, Esther's resolve remains unwavering, as she remains steadfast in her determination to wait for Judy, eager to meet him for the first time. In an unexpected turn of events, a young boy arrives on the scene and approaches Dorothy and Esther. He inquires directly of Esther whether she is Judy's younger sister, introducing an element of surprise and intrigue into the situation. Esther stammers, questioning the boy's identity. In response, Sebastian becomes agitated and grips Esther's wrist, suggesting that Judy's pride might be wounded by acknowledging her as his sister. Esther quickly frees herself from his grasp. Then Sebastian makes an offensive inquiry, asking about Esther's pay and offering to double it. As Esther remains silent, he pressures her for an answer. At this point, Dorothy intervenes, warning Sebastian that if he doesn't cease his behavior, she will report it to the Grand Duke. Sebastian arrives, casting doubt on Esther's identity as the Grand Duke's daughter due to her eye and hair color differences. Suspicious of her honesty, he resorts to hurtful comments, demeaning her value compared to his siblings. Dorothy's intervention fails to halt Sebastian's derogatory tirade, as he persists in belittling Esther and warns of his determination to pursue the issue further. Esther confides in Dorothy about her struggle to assert herself among aristocrats and her discomfort with Sebastian's insults. Their conversation is momentarily interrupted by a cheerful dog named Happy, briefly alleviating the tense situation. Eventually, the dog departs. Judy's anticipation of the talking bird is crushed, leaving him feeling disappointed. As he notices the time surpassing 5:30, he begins to assume Esther might have left. Overcoming his initial doubts, he opts to explore the garden. Finding Esther and Dorothy in cheerful conversation alongside Happy, his annoyance is evident as he questions Esther about waiting without him. However, his tone softens quickly as he clarifies that his frustration wasn't aimed at her. This encounter captures Judy's changing emotions from disappointment to concern, showcasing his evolving relationship with Esther. Esther expresses her contentment with the peaceful setting and assures Judy that his delay didn't affect her negatively. To her surprise, Judy lifts her onto his back in a lighthearted manner. Unsure of her place, Esther initially addresses him as Master, but Judy's laughter and reassurance dispel her unease. He humorously explains her weight is inconsequential. Judy suggests she calls him Appa to emphasize their sibling bond. On their way back to the mansion, Judy pauses to apologize for his tardiness, revealing his considerate nature and deepening their budding camaraderie. Esther swiftly brushes off his apology, expressing contentment with his presence. They wander through the garden, Esther comfortably perched on Judy's back, discussing the flora and the serene atmosphere. Her initial hesitance transforms into ease around Judy, her newfound brother. The playful banter and light-hearted interaction exemplify the budding bond between them. The conversation deepens as Judy emphasizes that waiting for others shouldn't be seen as enjoyable, advising Esther to value her time more. He asserts that if someone were to make Esther wait again, he wouldn't allow it to happen without taking action. This exchange reflects Judy's growing sense of responsibility towards Esther's well-being and his determination to stand up for her. In this moment, Judy truly embodies the role of a protective older brother, although he notices that Esther is quite light. Upon arriving at the mansion, Delbert notices Judy carrying Esther and rushes to assist, but Judy insists he step back. Judy reiterates his commitment to prioritize his promises with Esther moving forward. Meanwhile, Dennis keenly observes Judy's chivalrous actions, possibly gaining a new perspective on his brother's relationship with Esther. This scene portrays Judy's evolving role as a caring brother and sets the stage for deeper connections within the family. Once more, Esther finds herself immersed in the dream featuring the same boy as before. In her slumber, the boy awakens her with a gentle yet reassuring touch. As her eyes flutter open, Esther recognizes the boy from her previous dreams. He informs her that her fever has subsided and confesses that her illness pains him deeply. While Esther grapples with her curiosity about this kind-hearted boy, she suddenly awakens to reality. To her surprise, the Grand Duke and several others are present. Judy queries whether Esther recognizes him, leaving her baffled by the unexpected gathering of familiar faces. Shortly after, Judy clarifies to Esther that she felt ill upon returning from the garden, remaining unconscious for 2 days. The notion of a saint's awakening crosses their minds, but even that extended duration seems unusually lengthy. Esther gathers her thoughts and offers her apologies to Dehine and Judy. After examining her, Dehine assures Esther that her fever has abated. He questions if she might have a disposition toward fragile health, a notion Esther disputes, affirming her general well-being. Adding to this, Judy offers Esther a plush teddy bear, chosen for its resemblance to her. Esther contemplates whether her impending saintly awakening could be tied to her recent illness. The boy from her recurring dreams remains a constant presence in her thoughts, leaving a profound impact. In due course, Dorothy requests entry into Esther's room and, upon receiving approval, brings the doctors along. As they approach Esther, Dorothy cautions the doctors to exercise care, and they assure her of their utmost attention. Esther's anticipation for answers grows as the doctor's presence offers a glimmer of hope in understanding her mysterious circumstances. After a considerable duration, Esther assures the doctors that she is truly well, signaling for them to conclude their examination. In the interim, Dehine makes his presence felt, inquiring about Esther's condition. Noticing her reduced vitality, he expresses concern to the doctor. Though no outward indications are discernible, the doctor decides to continue the assessment for thoroughness. A peculiar moment transpires as Esther and the doctor share an inexplicable gaze, momentarily captivating her. Ultimately, the doctor divulges that Esther exhibits no discernible abnormalities, yet her energy levels appear diminished. He advises Dehine to be attentive and takes proper care of her. With his counsel given, the doctor takes his leave, departing the room. In the midst of the current situation, Esther's mind drifts back to her experiences at the temple, where she had grown accustomed to receiving scornful looks from those who held purity in high regard. As she grapples with the memory, Esther wonders if her past conversations had reached the Grand Duke's ears. Despite her anxieties, she apologizes again to Dehine. Swiftly, he reassures her that apologizing for falling ill is unnecessary, emphasizing her well-being as a source of gratitude for their new family. Dehine's words resonate with deep understanding and warmth, standing in stark contrast to the cold treatment she had experienced before. As the relentless rain continues to pour outside, the Grand Duke remains occupied with his responsibilities, aching to ensure his children's safety. In an urgent interruption, Dorothy bursts into Dehine's room, accompanied by Ben, bearing news of Esther's sudden deterioration. Dehine wastes no time and hurries to Esther's side, his concern evident in his swift movements. Amid the tension, Esther's voice trembles as she reveals an overwhelming fear that has taken hold of her. She confesses her dread of even the simplest acts, drawing breath and existing. Her words stun those present as she implores Dehine, her desperation laid bare, to end her suffering by ending her life. The room is filled with a heavy silence, the weight of Esther's plea hanging in the air, leaving everyone shocked and uncertain. Amidst the heavy rainfall, Ravian senses Dinah's Esther's real name, somber mood, and suggests that such weather affects her adversely. Ravian seeks Dinah's assistance in finding a way to unwind and relax, but Dinah's pain is evident as she pleads for relief from her distress. In the midst of this, Dehaen successfully rouses Esther from her troubled state. With care and concern, he questions if she recognizes her surroundings. Esther, momentarily disoriented, questions if she's still at the shrine. Dehaen gently reassures her, clarifying that she is in the Grand Duke's mansion. Regaining her composure, Esther apologizes for her agitation, revealing that during her time at the shrine, every rainy day was accompanied by distressing experiences at the hands of Ravian. Dehaen interrupts, urging her to take a moment to relax. Curious and concerned, Dehaen inquires to Ben about Ravian's identity and the nature of the traumatic events that occurred at the shrine. With care and reassurance, Dehaen lifts Esther onto the bed and promises to stay by her side until the thunder subsides. Esther, ever considerate, questions if he has other responsibilities to attend to which Dehaen assures her that he'll take care of his work right there. As he gently sets her down, he inquires to Esther about any past troubling incidents at the shrine, but Esther opts not to divulge the details. In the midst of their conversation, Dehaen inquires to Esther about her fear of thunder, and she responds that it has been a fear for a long time. With a tender touch, Dehaen caresses her hair and offers comforting words, assuring her that the mansion is a safe haven where no harm can befall her. He vows to protect her and encourages her to feel secure. Meanwhile, Judy makes an unexpected entrance, inquiring about Dehaen's presence. The heightened thunder prompted Judy to check on Esther's well-being. Judy approaches Esther, questioning her about her red eyes and suggesting he'll lie beside her to sleep. As Dehaen and Judy discuss Judy's habit of falling asleep while talking, Ben enters to update Dehaen on Judy. Dehaen reassures Ben that he's taking care of things. In a private conversation, Dehaen confides in Ben about Esther's troubling memories of the shrine and asks him to gather more information about the shrine, particularly the Saintess Ravian. Dehaen emphasizes the importance of learning more about this past connection. Dehaen emphasizes that everyone, regardless of their importance, must face their challenges head-on. The following day, Esther wakes to the heartwarming sight of Duke Dehaen and Judy sleeping beside her, showing unwavering support. After preparing herself, she leaves her room, noticing that Judy and Dehaen have refrained from mentioning rainy days, likely to spare her from distressing memories. As Esther enters the main hall, she encounters Dennis, and they exchange warm greetings. Esther's curiosity prompts her to inquire why Dennis is always engrossed in books. Dennis enlightens her, explaining that accumulating knowledge translates to acquiring power. Intrigued, Esther engages in further conversation with Dennis. Their discussion leads to Dennis inviting Esther for a leisurely stroll around the garden. While walking, Esther notices that the route they are taking is unfamiliar, prompting her to realize that this path differs from the one she had previously taken. Dennis stops and offers an apology, revealing that their garden walk was merely a pretext. Due to the presence of numerous maids, he concocted the excuse to facilitate their escape. In response to Esther's inquiry, Dennis explains that Judy is straightforward and accepted the ruse easily. However, he admits that he doesn't truly view Esther as his younger sister. He pledges to delve deeper into understanding her, indicating his intent to uncover more about her background and identity. This revelation leaves Esther pondering the complexity of her relationship with Dennis and the uncertainty that shrouds her past. The following day, Dennis is engrossed in his book until it grows late, prompting him to decide it's time to retire for the night. As he heads towards his room, he spots Judy and ponders the reason for his presence at such a late hour. Dennis' curiosity is piqued as he overhears Judy questioning Dehaen about his visit to Esther's room, leading him to ponder the nature of their relationship. Observing the strong connection between Judy and Esther and considering their shared sleeping arrangements, Dennis begins to question Esther's role within the family. His perception of her intelligence now intertwines with his uncertainty about her true intentions. Presently, Dennis guides Esther to a secluded corner of the garden and unveils a concealed passage, further deepening the intrigue. He clarifies that they will utilize this passage for their meetings, ensuring their discussions remain private and confidential, shielded from prying eyes or ears. Additionally, Dennis suggests to Esther that he has some matters to address in the village and proposes that they go there together, leaving the decision up to her. Following this, Dennis maneuvers through the narrow passage known as the dog hole, emerging on the other side. Fueled by determination, Esther follows suit, eventually reuniting with Dennis on the opposite end. During a fleeting moment, their eyes meet, a silent connection forged between them. They decide to continue their journey together. As they progress, Dennis and Esther arrive at the village. Esther's expression transforms into one of astonishment and joy upon witnessing the bustling activity and vibrant life of the community. The sight of the bustling crowd engrossed in their daily affairs leaves Esther both surprised and captivated. While they continue their journey, Dennis's mind drifts back to his father's chance encounter with Esther at the shrine. He ponders over which aspect of Esther Dehaing truly favors. To shift the subject, Dennis abruptly informs Esther that he has to attend to something else. Esther expresses her desire to accompany him, but Dennis declines her offer, suggesting that he will go alone. He requests that Esther wait for him at their current location, and she agrees. Noticing Esther's slightly apprehensive demeanor, Dennis inquires if she feels comfortable waiting alone. Esther assures him that she has no concerns and is content to wait. With that, Dennis departs on his own errand, leaving Esther behind as he heads off. As Esther watches Dennis's figure disappear into the distance, a sinking feeling settles in her heart. She gradually comprehends his intention to leave her behind. The pieces of the puzzle align: his sudden invitation, his quick departure, and she understands the logic behind it. A conflicted sensation courses through her. She comprehends the necessity for Dennis' actions, given her sudden presence as an unexpected family member, but it creates a tumult within her as she recollects the warm moments shared with Dehaing and Judy. Amid her internal struggle, Esther stands alone, her attention captured by a couple of men who eyed her curiously. Their focus shifts to her attire, a clear indicator of her noble status. Observing her lack of bodyguards, they anticipate an opportunity to exploit the situation due to their financial hardships. However, Esther's response takes them by surprise. She speaks of her willingness for death, suggesting that her kidnapping would be in vain, given her past experiences of abandonment. Her willingness to even provide them with a knife shocks the men. In the midst of this unsettling encounter, Dennis intervenes, arriving at the scene and questioning Esther's familiarity with the men. The men are amused by the situation, seeing an opportunity to target two seemingly defenseless nobles for abduction. Dennis confronts the men, challenging their knowledge of his identity. Their recognition of his distinctive eye color confirms that he belongs to the Tertia family. In response, Dennis taunts them, daring them to touch him if they dare. Feeling cornered, the men quickly backtrack, apologizing and choosing to flee the scene to avoid any confrontation. After dealing with the men, Dennis turns his attention back to Esther, his demeanor shifting to one of anger and concern. He demands an explanation for her behavior, clearly agitated by her actions and the risky situation she put herself in. Shortly after, Dennis admits to Esther his deliberate act of leaving her alone. He explains his curiosity about observing her genuine emotions and reactions while she's by herself. However, he acknowledges his oversight in not considering the potential danger she could have faced. Esther, perplexed by Dennis's seemingly emotionless approach, questions his true nature. Dennis swiftly expresses remorse and apologizes to Esther for his thoughtless action, assuring her that he will not repeat such behavior in the future. Dennis confesses to Esther that he didn't intend to abandon her and advises her against talking about suicide. He emphasizes the value of appreciating life. Reflecting on their conversation, Dennis urges Esther to return to the mansion. Esther, however, raises doubts about Dennis seeing her as a sibling. In response, Dennis expresses his desire to retract his earlier statement and attempts to reason with Esther about the gravity of discussing death. Together, they head back to the mansion. Later during a meal, Dehaing prompts Dennis to address the events of the previous day. Dennis openly admits his lack of caution and sincerely apologizes for his actions. Dehaing graciously accepts Dennis' sincere apology, commending his honesty. Despite the limited time they spent together, Dehaing emphasizes that Esther is now an integral part of their family, and he looks forward to a future filled with happiness together. The conversation then shifts to the approaching birthdays of both Dennis and Judy. Dehaing seeks their input on how to celebrate the occasions. Dennis proposes a masquerade party where disguises would add an element of intrigue. Judy suggests a book discussion, aiming for a more intellectually stimulating event. Amid a contemplative pause, Dehaing breaks the silence and reveals his unique plan for the upcoming birthday celebration. He expresses a desire to do something remarkable and memorable for the event and announces his intention to introduce Esther during the party, signifying her newfound place within their family. When asked for his idea, Dehaing reveals his plan to create a special seat for Esther and formally introduce her to their circle during the upcoming twins' birthday celebration, capitalizing on the gathering of all the important guests. Judy enthusiastically supports this concept, relishing the opportunity to showcase Esther and undermine Sebastian's attitude. Esther, however, is internally conflicted as this clashes with her initial plan to quietly leave the mansion. Dehaing turns his attention to Esther, reassuring her that they have 3 months to prepare for the birthday party. He informs her of his decision to arrange a tutor for her, ensuring she is well prepared for the occasion. Esther expresses her gratitude for his support. Shortly after, Ben arrives and updates Dehaing about the discovery of skilled tutors for Esther's education. Ben emphasizes their expertise and significant knowledge in various subjects. He further reveals that these tutors are currently teaching the Lady of the Count, underscoring their high qualifications. Dehaen informs Ben that the tutors for Esther will be paid 3 times the amount given to the Lady of the Count for their services. Ben expresses his astonishment at Dehaen's willingness to spend generously when it concerns Esther's well-being, highlighting his dedication to her. In addition, Ben shares the results of his research into the allegations of student abuse at the temple. He explains that he was told nothing of the sort had occurred there, and the authorities denied the existence of any incidents involving locking students in the building. This response perplexes Ben, as he expected some acknowledgement or investigation into the matter. Ben proceeds to share the findings of his investigation into the temple's children, specifically focusing on a student named Ravian. He reveals that after thorough research, it was determined that there is only one person with that name, the Lady of Duke Baron. Ben goes on to explain that Ravian was being trained with the intention of becoming a saintess in the future. Due to the potential secrecy surrounding such activities, it is possible that any abuse or wrongdoing at the temple might have been concealed. Dehaen acknowledges this information and expresses his interest in continuing the investigation. Despite Ben's efforts, the reported findings suggest that there was no evidence of abuse within the temple and everything seemed normal. This perplexes Dehaen, leaving him to wonder about the true nature of what transpired with Esther during her time at the temple. The mysterious circumstances surrounding her experiences there remain unresolved, prompting further curiosity and concern. Esther is overjoyed by the freedom to use as much paper as she pleases without any worry. Her current happiness contrasts with her memories of the shrine, where her drawings were often marred. Now she contemplates her next artistic creation with delight. In the midst of her creative moment, Dorothy enters and swiftly notices that Esther has depicted her in the drawing. A heartfelt token of gratitude for Dorothy's continuous assistance. Enthralled by Esther's artwork, Dorothy realizes that Esther possesses remarkable artistic talents and contemplates sharing this discovery with the Grand Duke. Despite Dorothy's intention to inform the Grand Duke, Esther quickly interjects, downplaying her own abilities by stating that anyone could draw better than her. This self-doubt traces back to her experiences at the shrine, where the saintess frequently undermined her confidence by suggesting that others were more skilled artists. Esther's past insecurities still affect her perception of her artistic talents, even as she creates a meaningful and heartfelt piece. The impact of the shrine's demeaning remarks on Esther's self-esteem is evident. Dorothy, on the other hand, is genuinely impressed by Esther's artistic skills and labels her as a genius, affirming that the quality of her work belies her young age. Despite Dorothy's praise, Esther still struggles with feelings of being overrated and doubts her own abilities. In the midst of this exchange, Dennis arrives, drawn by Dorothy's excitement. Curious, he questions Esther about her choice of address, suggesting she call him brother or appa since they are now a family. Encouraged by his words, Esther tries out the term brother for Dennis, and after some practice, he instructs her to consistently use that term to address him in the future. This moment showcases Dennis' desire for a genuine sibling bond and his effort to make Esther feel like a true part of the family. Furthermore, Dennis engages Esther in a conversation about her preferences, specifically her feelings about books. He notices Esther's drawing, and after confirming that she indeed created it, he asks if she could draw him as well. Although Esther initially doubts her abilities, Dorothy intervenes and assures Dennis that Esther is actually a talented artist. Encouraged by Dorothy's words, Dennis persists in his request, prompting Esther to agree to draw his portrait. With Dennis' gratitude, Esther begins sketching his portrait. Dennis is intrigued by the focused expression on Esther's face while she works. Despite Esther noticing his gaze, Dennis doesn't elaborate on his observation and urges her to continue. As Esther completes the portrait relatively quickly, she expresses her concern about whether it meets Dennis' expectations, displaying her insecurities about her artistic skills. Upon inspecting the portrait, Dennis promptly recognizes Esther's remarkable talent, and his admiration for her skill becomes evident. He's intrigued by the realization that a child could possess such artistic prowess. However, Esther's self-doubt still lingers, and she continues to downplay her abilities, considering them accessible to anyone. Dennis questions whether Esther acquired her drawing skills at the shrine, but she denies having learned there. He emphasizes to Esther that her talent is something to be proud of, and he promptly rises from his seat, intending to find Delbert and share the portrait with him. As Dennis departs, Esther experiences a genuine sense of delight and accomplishment, finally acknowledging her own artistic capabilities. While conversing, Delbert expresses his dissatisfaction with the current regimen of regular training, indicating his belief that it falls short of expectations. In response, Dehaen acknowledges this sentiment but counters that the prevailing atmosphere of ease is misleading, cautioning that the unpredictable nature of conflict necessitates a constant state of readiness. He emphasizes the need for vigilance, revealing a lack of complete trust in the stability of their circumstances. In the midst of their discussion, Dennis queries Delbert about Esther's whereabouts. As Dehaene seeks to ascertain Esther's location, Delbert informs him that she is currently situated in the garden, deeply engrossed in her artistic pursuit of drawing. Delbert continues to share his observation with Dehaene, expressing that Esther possesses exceptional talent in drawing. Dehaene's curiosity is piqued by this revelation, a mixture of surprise and intrigue evident in his reaction. Responding to the newfound information, Dehaene makes his way to the garden, where Esther is engrossed in her artistic activity. He calls out to her, inquiring about her whereabouts. In the garden, Esther is seated at a table, surrounded by her drawing tools, her intention being to create a self-portrait. Amidst her intense focus on her drawing, Esther remains unaware of her surroundings, not noticing Dehaene's approach. Esther, lost in her thoughts of what to draw, suddenly feels someone's presence and raises her eyes, discovering Dehaene standing there. She realizes he has been watching her for a while. Curious, Dehaene asks if she drew Dennis, and Esther affirms this while modestly expressing that she doesn't believe the portrait turned out beautifully. Dehaene then kindly asks Esther if she would be willing to draw a portrait of him, assuring her that it's optional and he won't pressure her. Esther expresses her self-doubt about her drawing skills, prompting Dehaene to reveal this plan to decorate his office with a portrait. He assures Esther that if she's uncomfortable, he'll seek another artist. Delbert recalls that Dehaene typically dislikes portraits due to their inconvenience. Despite this, Dehaene persists with heartfelt enthusiasm, using a bit of exaggeration to persuade Esther. With genuine sincerity, he once again asks if she considered drawing his portrait. Touched by his earnestness, Esther agrees to the task. Dehaene expresses gratitude and unwavering confidence in her abilities. This exchange showcases a unique connection forming between Esther and Dehaene, as he encourages her artistic potential and she becomes more receptive to his kindness and consideration. In another corner of the scene, Ben approaches Delbert seeking Dehaene's whereabouts, indicating he has information to share. Delbert gestures toward Esther and Dehaene, unveiling that Esther is presently engrossed in crafting a portrait for the Grand Duke. This revelation leaves Ben taken aback, echoing Delbert's prior observation about Dehaene's aversion to portraits. Ben's enthusiasm bubbles over, prompting Delbert to caution him to modulate his voice. The paradox is striking. A figure renowned as the world's demon, unveiling a gentle side to a mere 10-year-old. Dehaene and Esther share a heartfelt conversation, where Esther expresses her joy in drawing. Dehaene responds warmly, offering to not only help her improve her artistic skills, but also encourage her exploration of various interests. This tender interaction marks a significant shift in their relationship, as Dehaene's benevolent intentions and Esther's growing appreciation for his kindness begin to intertwine. Esther is struck by his benevolence, but she remains cautious, wondering why Dehaene is being so kind. Grateful for his gesture, she expresses her thanks while grappling with the challenge of not getting too accustomed to this newfound warmth in her life. As she completes her drawing, she can't help but ponder whether her efforts will meet Dehaene's expectations, adding an undercurrent of uncertainty to her sense of accomplishment. Dehaene's excitement is palpable as he calls Ben over to see the portrait Esther has created. Ben is rendered speechless by the quality of the artwork and acknowledges it as a remarkable talent. The notion of the shrine's influence crosses his mind, but Dehaene views it as Esther's unique gift. With the Tertia family dinner on the horizon, Dehaene decides that the occasion is perfect to showcase the portrait. It's a testament to Esther's rapid development and a chance for the family to celebrate her talents. The discovery of Esther's artistic ability adds another layer to her identity within the Tertia household, promising a memorable and meaningful evening ahead. Dehaene's excitement grows as he learns that Dennis possesses the frame won at the auction, prompting him to request Delbert to find an alternative fancy frame for the portrait. The fact that Dehaene is so invested in displaying the portrait indicates his genuine admiration for Esther's artwork. Esther, on the other hand, is taken aback by Dehaene's unexpected reaction. She had previously perceived him as much stricter and is unsure of how to respond to this newfound warmth. The idea of her portrait being showcased at the upcoming Tertia family dinner is beyond Esther's expectations, leaving her in a state of amazement. The affectionate and kind treatment she's receiving is a stark contrast to her previous experiences and is a novel feeling for someone who has never encountered such care and attention since her birth. This turn of events marks a significant shift in Esther's life within the Tertia household. And that wraps up another thrilling recap, but the adventure doesn't end here. Prepare to be shocked by our second recap's unexpected plot twists and witness the evolution of your favorite characters. Subscribe to our channel if you want more twists, turns, and heart-pounding stories. Stay tuned for our next recap.